at Shean. Beautiful site, great ruins, great acoustics. Now this, of course, is the theater of Shean. We're very near the end of the valley that leads into the Jordan. Across from us, you can see the Acropolis over there, the ruins here at Shean. Today we're sitting in the theater of Shean. Now the theater, as you can see, is being restored. It's being rebuilt. They're trying to get it back to show you and to show me a little bit of its original glory, if you will. Now notice the acoustics in here. I mean, I'm just speaking in a regular voice. The back wall builds up to the top of the last bench seat, and of course, any reverberation comes off. So you can see even in ancient times, people ask me all the time, well, how did they speak to thousands of people? Well, very simple. In a theater like this, you can do it without any amplification at all. Now this site becomes very significant because back in 1 Samuel chapter 15, 1 Samuel 15, Samuel had commissioned Saul by God to go and utterly destroy Agag. Agag was the king of the Amalekites. So Saul had gathered the troops. He had gone to war against the Amalekites. He destroyed all of the Amalekites except for King Agag. He kept the king. He kept some of the spoils. He kept some of the cattle. And he came back to do the sacrifices, and that's when Samuel said, hey, Saul, how did the battle go? Saul said, hey, we destroyed everybody. We destroyed everything. He said, well then, why do I hear the lowing of the cattle and the bleating of the sheep? He goes, well, we kept back some animals to sacrifice, you see. And Samuel laid a very important truth on him. In 1 Samuel 15, he said, obedience is better than sacrifice. And truly, that's the heart of God. To obey Him, to give our lives to Him. Now, subsequently, Saul went into another battle against the Philistines. In the latter chapters of 1 Samuel, around chapter 31, Saul was waging war against the Philistines, and a random arrow was shot into the air, and it pierced him right between the chink in his armor, and he was ready to die. But he didn't die. And he called his armor bearer to come next to him and said, thrust your sword through me that I may perish so I won't fall into the hands of the Philistines. And the guy said, no, I can't do it. So who happens by? An Amalekite. An Amalekite, according to 2 Samuel chapter 1. And the Amalekite thrusts Saul through and kills him. Now that becomes very significant. For you see, Amalek, the Amalekites, represent the flesh, a type, a picture of the flesh. And Saul, listen gang, Saul did not utterly destroy the flesh. Thus, the flesh came back to utterly destroy him. You see, he didn't obey God, and it cost him. And when we don't crucify the flesh, when we allow the flesh to rear up its ugly head in our hearts and in our lives, the flesh will come back to destroy us, just as that Amalekite came back through a descendant of King Ahab to destroy Saul. Well, Saul lost his life. We do know in 1 Samuel chapters 31 and 32 that Saul and his son Jonathan had their heads cut off. The Bible says that their headless bodies hung on the wall or the gate of Shean. And that's where you are today. In the exact location where Saul, his body hung on the wall displayed. Why? Because he didn't utterly destroy the flesh. A lot of us have problems that we deal with. I understand that. We all have areas in our lives we struggle with. Maybe it's drugs, alcohol, pornography, lust. I'm not sure. We all struggle in different areas. And if you're not struggling in an area, please let me know. I'd like to touch you afterwards. But we need to utterly destroy the flesh. You say, but Clark, I've been trying to destroy the flesh. I have not been very successful. Well, of course, because destroying the flesh is a work of the Spirit. It's not something we work at, muster up, or strive for. It's something that Christ does in and through us. And as we allow Christ and the Spirit of God to work in our hearts and in our lives, by His Spirit, we'll become more than conquerors. And we'll be able to overcome the areas in our lives that weigh us down. And thus destroying the flesh, so that we won't be destroyed by the flesh, like King Saul, and hung on a wall for display. And that ought to be the heart of each and every one of us.
May your light inside of my heart and my mind be all for you. I worship you. I worship you. I give all that's inside of my heart and my mind to worship you. I love you, Jesus. I love you with all that's inside of my heart and